The rifle's crack split the Arizona morning air like thunder, and every man within 50 yards fell silent as the tin can sailed backward off the fence post, spinning 3 times before hitting the dust. Catherine Hartley lowered her Winchester with the kind of casual grace that made grown men swallow hard, her honey-blonde braids swinging across her back as she turned to face the crowd of competitors gathered in the town square of Tombstone. It was July 1882, and the summer heat shimmered off the wooden buildings lining Allen Street. But the temperature had nothing on the fire in Catherine's blue eyes as she surveyed the line of men who had just watched her demolish their best efforts at marksmanship. "Anyone else want to try for that prize money?" she called out, her voice carrying clear and strong across the competition grounds. The silver-trimmed rifle gleamed in the sunlight, and the leather holster at her hip held a Colt revolver that she wore with the comfort of a second skin. Marshal Virgil Earp stood on the wooden platform beside the registration table, shaking his head with something between admiration and disbelief. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we have our winner. Miss Catherine Hartley has outshot every competitor in this year's Tombstone marksmanship competition, hitting 47 targets out of 50 at varying distances." A ripple of applause moved through the crowd, though Catherine could see the tight jaws and narrowed eyes of more than a few men who did not appreciate being bested by a woman. She had grown accustomed to that look over the years, ever since her father had first placed a rifle in her hands at age 8 on their ranch outside of San Antonio. He had taught her that shooting was not about strength, but about patience, breath control, and respect for the weapon. Her mother had died giving birth to her younger brother, and her father had raised both children with the same expectations and the same skills. When fever took her father and brother within days of each other 3 years ago, Catherine had been left with nothing but debt and a reputation as the best shot in 3 counties. She had sold the ranch to pay off what was owed and had been traveling ever since, entering competitions where prize money could keep her fed and housed. Tombstone was just another stop on a long road that seemed to stretch endlessly before her, though she had heard the silver mines here were producing wealth and opportunity for those brave enough or desperate enough to seize it. "That was some fine shooting, miss." The voice came from her left, deep and warm with a hint of Texas drawl that made Catherine's heart skip before she even turned to see who had spoken. The man standing beside her was tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy: denim trousers, a worn leather vest over a blue cotton shirt, boots that had seen plenty of hard miles, and a hat that shaded eyes the color of rich earth. A gun belt sat comfortably on his hips, and Catherine noticed immediately that he wore his Colt on the left side, marking him as a left-handed draw. There was something solid about him, something that spoke of competence and quiet confidence rather than the swagger she had seen in so many other men. "Thank you," Catherine replied, studying him with the same careful assessment she would give to a horse she was considering purchasing. "You competed." "I did, came in 3rd, which is not something I am accustomed to." He smiled when he said it, the expression reaching his eyes and crinkling the corners in a way that suggested he smiled often. "Name is Cole Brennan. I run a freight operation between here and Tucson, though I have been known to hire out my gun when the situation requires it." Catherine accepted his offered hand, noting the calluses that spoke of hard work and the firm but respectful grip. "Catherine Hartley, I travel wherever the competitions take me. That must be a lonely way to live." Cole said it without judgment, just a simple observation that somehow cut right to the heart of what Catherine felt most nights when she lay in whatever boarding house room she could afford, staring at the ceiling and wondering if this was all there was. "It pays better than most work available to women," Catherine said, her tone sharper than she intended. "I can sew and cook and clean, but none of that would earn me enough to live on my own terms." Cole nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. "I meant no offense." I actually think it is remarkable. I have been shooting since I was old enough to hold a rifle steady, and I have never seen anyone as accurate as you were today. That shot at 300 yards where you hit the target dead center. That was something special. Catherine felt her defensiveness ease slightly. There was no condescension in his tone, no hidden mockery, just genuine respect from one shooter to another. My father always said that distance shooting was 90% mental. You have to account for wind, elevation, even the heat shimmer. But mostly you have to believe the shot will land before you even pull the trigger. Sounds like your father was a wise man. He was. Catherine turned away, not wanting to see pity in this stranger's eyes. She walked toward the marshal's platform to collect her winnings, aware that Cole was following a respectful 2 paces behind. Marshal Earp counted out $100 in silver coins and paper money, a sum that would keep Catherine comfortable for several months if she was careful. "You planning to stay in Tombstone a while, Miss Hartley?" "I had not decided," Catherine admitted. "Is there work here for someone with my skills?" Earp exchanged a glance with Cole, and something unspoken passed between them. "There might be. Cole here was just telling me yesterday that he needed to hire someone for a freight run up to Prescott, dangerous route with all the bandits working the territory. He needs someone who can shoot straight and keep their head in a fight." Catherine looked at Cole with renewed interest. "Is that so?" Cole removed his hat, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that seemed more nervous than she would have expected from a man of his obvious experience. "It is. I have a contract to deliver mining equipment and supplies to Prescott, but I have lost 2 drivers in the past 3 months to bandits. I need someone riding shotgun who can actually hit what they aim at. The pay would be $50 for the round trip, plus food and expenses." $50 for how long? 2 weeks, maybe 3 depending on weather and road conditions. Catherine did the mathematics quickly in her head. $150 would give her enough cushion to perhaps settle somewhere for a while, maybe even consider what came next beyond the endless cycle of competitions and prize money. But more than that, there was something about Cole Brennan that intrigued her. He did not look at her like she was a curiosity or a threat to his masculinity. He looked at her like she was someone he wanted watching his back. "What are you hauling?" she asked. "If bandits are that interested, it must be valuable." "Mining equipment, some payroll for the operations up north, and a few personal items for families who have money enough to pay for secure transport." Cole met her eyes steadily. "I will not lie to you, it is dangerous work. The Apache Kid and his crew have been hitting freight wagons all along this route, and there are at least 3 other outlaw gangs working the territory. But I am good at what I do, and with someone of your skill backing me up, I think we could make it through clean." Catherine found herself nodding before she had fully thought through the implications. There was something compelling about the idea of working alongside someone rather than constantly competing against everyone around her. And if she was being honest with herself, something compelling about Cole Brennan himself. "When do we leave?" Cole's smile was like sunrise breaking over the desert. "Day after tomorrow, just before dawn. That gives you time to rest up and get whatever supplies you need. Meet me at the freight office on 3rd Street. We will be taking 2 wagons, so I will have another driver for the second rig, but you will ride with me on the lead wagon." "I will be there," Catherine promised, and as she walked away with her prize money tucked securely in her leather satchel, she could feel Cole's eyes on her back. It was not the predatory gaze she had learned to recognize and avoid, but something else entirely. Something that made her pulse quicken and her thoughts scatter like startled birds. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Catherine purchased ammunition, checked and cleaned her weapons, and invested in a good bedroll and some trail clothes better suited to weeks on the road than the simple cotton dress she had worn for the competition. The boarding house where she stayed was run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who seemed to know everything that happened in Tombstone within minutes of it occurring, "You are riding out with Cole Brennan," Mrs. Patterson said over breakfast the morning before Catherine was set to leave. It was not a question. "I am." "He needs someone who can shoot." Mrs. Patterson poured coffee into Catherine's cup, her movements deliberate. "Cole is a good man, lost his wife and baby daughter to cholera 4 years back, nearly destroyed him from what I hear. He sold his ranch down in Texas and came out here to start fresh. Built that freight business from nothing, and he is known for being honest and reliable. But he has been alone all this time, and I think that kind of loneliness can eat away at a person's soul." Catherine absorbed this information, understanding that Mrs. Patterson was offering it as both warning and endorsement. "I am just doing a job for him." "Of course you are, dear." Mrs. Patterson's smile was knowing. "But sometimes jobs become something more, especially when two people are facing danger together. You watch yourself out there, and I do not just mean the bandits." Catherine thought about those words as she made her way through Tombstone's dusty streets toward the freight office the next morning. The sun had not yet risen, but the sky was lightening to pearl gray in the east. The town was mostly quiet at this hour, just a few early risers and late-night drunks stumbling between the saloons and boarding houses. Cole was already at the freight office, securing canvas tarps over the cargo in 2 sturdy wagons. Each wagon was pulled by a team of 4 horses, and Catherine could see immediately that the animals were well cared for and strong. A younger man, perhaps 19 or 20, was checking the harnesses on the second wagon. "Catherine," Cole greeted her with that warm smile that seemed to light up his entire face. "Good timing. This is Tommy Garcia. He will be driving the second wagon." Tommy tipped his hat to Catherine, his dark eyes curious but friendly. "Ma'am. Cole told me you can shoot the wings off a fly at 100 paces. I have never tried that particular trick," Catherine said with a small smile, "but I can hit what I aim at." "That is all we need," Cole said. He gestured to the lead wagon. "Your spot is up here beside me. We have provisions for 3 weeks tucked under the seat, and I have a Winchester rifle mounted within easy reach. But I expect you will prefer to use your own weapon." Catherine climbed up onto the wagon seat, settling her rifle across her lap and adjusting the Colt at her hip. The eastern sky was blooming into shades of pink and gold, and she felt a strange flutter of anticipation in her chest that had nothing to do with the danger ahead. Cole swung up beside her with easy grace, taking up the reins and clicking softly to the horses. Behind them, Tommy did the same, and the 2 wagons rolled out of Tombstone as the sun broke free of the horizon, painting the desert in shades of amber and rust. The first day on the trail passed without incident. The road north from Tombstone toward Prescott wound through high desert country, with scattered juniper and mesquite providing sparse shade from the relentless sun. Cole proved to be an easy companion, pointing out landmarks and sharing stories about the various trips he had made along this route. He had a dry sense of humor and a way of describing people and situations that made Catherine laugh despite herself. "See that rock formation over there?" Cole pointed to a cluster of red boulders stacked impossibly high. "That is where I had my first run-in with bandits about 6 months after I started this business. 3 men thought they would relieve me of a payroll shipment. I managed to convince them otherwise." "How did you manage that?" Catherine asked, genuinely curious. "I am a decent shot, and I had positioned myself behind those rocks with enough ammunition to hold them off until they got bored and rode away. But the truth is, they were not professionals, just desperate men making bad choices. I like to think that maybe they found honest work afterward, though I know that is probably wishful thinking." "You did not kill them," Cole shook his head. "I have killed men when I had no other choice, but I do not take pleasure in it, and I do not do it unless my life or someone else's life depends on it. My father used to say that every man you kill takes a piece of your soul with him. I have given away enough pieces already." Catherine studied his profile as he guided the horses along the rutted road. There was something deeply decent about Cole Brennan, something that made her want to know more about the man behind the capable exterior. "Mrs. Patterson told me you lost your family." Cole's hands tightened on the reins, but his voice remained steady. "Sarah and little Emma. Cholera swept through our town in Texas and they were gone within 3 days. I have never felt so helpless in my life. All my strength and skill with weapons, and I could not protect them from something I could not see or fight." "I am sorry," Catherine said quietly. "I lost my father and brother to fever 3 years ago. I understand that helplessness." Cole glanced at her, and in his eyes she saw recognition of shared grief. "Then you know why I left Texas. Too many memories everywhere I looked. I needed to start over somewhere. I would not see Sarah around every corner or hear Emma's laugh in every child's voice. Is it better here?" Some days I can go hours without thinking about them. Other days the weight of it nearly crushes me." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "But lately, I have been thinking that maybe it is time to stop running from the grief and start building something new. Not to replace what I lost, but to honor it by living fully rather than just surviving." Catherine felt something shift inside her chest, a recognition that perhaps she had been doing the same thing. Running from competition to competition, never settling, never allowing herself to imagine a future beyond the next prize purse. "That sounds like wisdom." "That sounds like exhaustion," Cole corrected with a slight smile. "But maybe wisdom and exhaustion look the same after enough years." They camped that night beside a creek where cottonwood trees provided shelter, and the sound of running water was a pleasant backdrop to the crackling fire. Tommy proved to be skilled at camp cooking, producing a surprisingly good stew from dried beef, beans, and some wild onions he gathered near the creek. Catherine volunteered to take the first watch, and Cole did not argue or suggest that she was not capable of the responsibility. She sat with her back against a boulder, rifle across her knees, watching the stars emerge in the vast darkness above. The desert at night was a symphony of small sounds. The rustle of creatures in the brush, the distant howl of coyotes, the soft breathing of the horses picketed nearby. Catherine had always loved this time of day when the world seemed to pause and take a breath before continuing its endless motion. "You should try to sleep," Cole's voice came softly from behind her. "I am awake anyway." "Cannot sleep," Catherine admitted. "First night on a trail always has me keyed up." Cole settled beside her, careful to keep a respectful distance but close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body in the cooling desert air. "I used to be the same way. Now I find that the trail is where I sleep best. Something about being under the open sky makes me feel less trapped." "Trapped by what?" "Memories. Expectations. The weight of what other people think I should be doing with my life." Cole picked up a small stone and tossed it into the darkness. "My brother writes me every few months from Texas, telling me it is time to come home, settle down again, find a nice woman and start over. He means well, but he does not understand that you cannot just replace people like they are worn-out boots." "No," Catherine agreed. "But maybe you can honor what you had by allowing yourself to feel something new, not as a replacement but as a continuation of who you are." Cole turned to look at her, and even in the dim starlight she could see the intensity in his gaze. "Is that what you tell yourself?" "I do not tell myself much of anything," Catherine admitted. "I just keep moving and try not to think too hard about what it all means." "That sounds lonely." "It is," Catherine said, surprising herself with the honesty, "but loneliness felt safer than risking more loss." Cole was quiet for a long moment, and Catherine thought perhaps she had said too much, revealed too much of the raw places inside herself. But then he spoke, his voice low and earnest. "I watched you at that competition, and it was not just your shooting that impressed me. It was the way you carried yourself, like you did not need anyone's approval or permission to be exactly who you are. I envied that. I have spent the past 4 years trying to figure out who I am without Sarah and Emma, and I am still not sure I know the answer." "Maybe we are both still figuring it out," Catherine said softly. "And maybe that is all right," Cole smiled, and Catherine felt something warm unfurl in her chest. When I said I wanted you watching my back, I meant it in more ways than one. I have a feeling you are someone worth knowing, Catherine Hartley. The feeling is mutual, Cole Brennan. They sat together in comfortable silence after that, taking turns on watch through the night. When dawn came, Catherine felt more rested than she had in months despite the minimal sleep. The second day on the trail brought them into rougher country. The road climbed through rocky hills covered in juniper and pinyon pine, and the wagons creaked and groaned with the effort of the ascent. Cole kept a sharp eye on the surrounding terrain, and Catherine noticed that he had moved his rifle to an even more accessible position. "This is bandit country," he explained when he caught her noticing. "Plenty of places to set up an ambush, and we are moving slow enough that we would be easy targets." Catherine scanned the ridgelines above them, looking for any glint of metal or movement that might betray watchers. Her instincts, honed by years of hunting and competition shooting, told her they were being observed, though she could not pinpoint exactly from where. "Cole," she said quietly, "we have company." Cole did not turn his head or change his posture, but she saw his shoulders tense slightly. "Where?" "Ridge to the north, about 300 yards up. I caught sun reflecting off something metal about 2 minutes ago. How many? Cannot tell yet. But if they are smart, they will have people on both sides of the road." As if summoned by her words, a shot rang out, and the lead horse in their team screamed and reared. Cole fought to control the animals while Catherine brought her rifle up, searching for the shooter. Behind them, she heard Tommy shouting in alarm. "There." Cole pointed to a cluster of boulders on the south side of the road where gun smoke was dissipating in the breeze. Catherine aimed and fired in one smooth motion, and she had the satisfaction of seeing a man stumble backward and drop his rifle. More shots followed, coming from multiple directions. Cole managed to get the wagon behind a large outcropping of rock that provided partial cover, and Tommy maneuvered the second wagon close behind. Catherine counted at least 5 different shooters, which meant they were outnumbered but not impossibly so. "Tommy, stay with the wagons and keep the horses calm," Cole ordered, drawing his Colt and moving to take position behind a boulder. "Catherine, think you can reach that rifleman on the north ridge?" Catherine judged the distance and wind. "Yes, but it will take a minute to line up the shot." "Take your time, I will keep them busy." Cole began returning fire, his shots measured and accurate. Catherine settled into position, bracing her rifle against the rock and taking slow, deep breaths. The target was partially hidden behind a juniper tree, but she had a clear line of sight to his left shoulder. She waited for him to shift position, for that moment when he would expose more of himself to take his own shot. There. She squeezed the trigger smoothly and the rifle bucked against her shoulder. The man on the ridge jerked and fell, his rifle clattering down the rocks. "Nice shot," Cole said with genuine admiration. 2 down, at least 3 to go. The remaining bandits seemed to reconsider their odds after losing 2 men in quick succession. The shooting became more sporadic, and Catherine caught glimpses of movement as the attackers repositioned. She fired twice more, not hitting anyone but coming close enough to keep them pinned down. "They are going to run," Cole predicted, and sure enough, within minutes they heard the sound of horses galloping away toward the east. Catherine kept her rifle ready, scanning for any sign of a trick, but the desert was silent except for the nervous shifting of their horses. Cole moved cautiously from cover, checking the surrounding area before signaling all clear. "Everyone all right?" he called back to Tommy. "Yes, sir, just a little rattled." Tommy's voice was shaky but steady. Cole moved to check the lead horse that had been struck by the first shot. The animal had a bloody furrow across its shoulder but did not appear seriously injured. "Bullet just grazed him. He will be sore, but he can pull his weight." Catherine climbed down from the wagon to check on the men she had shot. The first was dead, her bullet having caught him in the chest. She felt the familiar hollow sensation that came with taking a life, even in self-defense. The second man was wounded in the shoulder as she had intended, conscious but in pain. Please, he gasped when he saw her approaching. Do not kill me. We were just trying to make some money. Nobody was supposed to get hurt. Cole joined her, looking down at the wounded man with an expression of weary resignation. You are part of the Apache Kids crew? No, sir. Just some boys from Tucson trying to make a stake. We heard about your freight runs and thought it would be easy money. How did that work out for you? Cole asked without sympathy. He pulled out his canteen and poured water over the man's wound, making him cry out. That bullet needs to come out and you need a doctor. There is a mining camp about 5 miles north of here. Can you ride? The man nodded weakly. My horse ran off, but I can walk if I have to. Cole looked at Catherine, a question in his eyes. She understood what he was asking. They could leave this man here to die, eliminate a threat, and send a message to other would-be bandits. Or they could show mercy and perhaps prove that there were other ways to resolve conflicts than simply adding to the body count. Put him in the second wagon, Catherine said. We will drop him at the mining camp, but if we see him again on this road, I will not miss his heart next time. The man's eyes widened with relief and fear in equal measure. Thank you, ma'am. I swear you will not regret this. I had better not, Catherine said coldly, though inside she felt relief at not having to leave him to die slowly in the desert heat. They loaded the wounded man into Tommy's wagon and buried the dead one beside the road, marking the grave with stones. It took nearly 2 hours before they were ready to move on, and Catherine noticed that Cole was watching her with an expression she could not quite read. What? She asked as they settled back onto the wagon seat. You surprise me, Cole said simply. Most people I know would have left him or finished him. Showing mercy in this territory is often seen as weakness. I do not care how it is seen, Catherine replied. I know the difference between defending myself and murder. That man was no longer a threat. Cole smiled, and there was something warm and wondering in his expression. You are something special, Catherine Hartley. I hope you know that. Catherine felt heat rise in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the desert sun. You are not so bad yourself, Cole Brennan. They reached the mining camp before sunset, a rough collection of tents and temporary structures where men extracted copper from the reluctant earth. The camp doctor, a grizzled man who looked like he had seen everything the frontier could offer, took charge of the wounded bandit with professional efficiency. He will live if infection does not set in, the doctor told them. I will send word to the marshal in Prescott about what happened here. You folks did the right thing bringing him in. Cole paid for a hot meal for Catherine, Tommy, and himself at the camp's makeshift restaurant, where they ate beef stew and fresh bread that tasted like heaven after a day of trail rations and violence. Catherine noticed that Cole seemed more relaxed here among the miners and workers, trading jokes and stories with men who clearly knew and respected him. You have made quite a name for yourself on this route, she observed as they walked back to where they had camped the wagons on the outskirts of the settlement. Reputation is everything in this business, Cole explained. If people know you are honest and reliable, they will pay extra for your services. If they know you are also someone who can protect their goods and show mercy when appropriate, they will trust you with their most valuable cargo. Is that what I am? Catherine asked, surprised at the flirtatious note in her own voice. Valuable cargo? Cole stopped walking and turned to face her fully. The sun was setting behind him, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, and in that light he looked like something from a painting. You are something far more important than cargo, Catherine. You are a partner. Someone I can trust to have my back in a fight and to make good decisions when it matters. That is rarer than gold in this territory. Catherine's heart was beating faster than it had during the firefight earlier. Cole, I need to tell you something. I have not let myself feel much of anything for a long time. It seemed safer to just keep moving, keep competing, keep everything at arm's length. But being here with you, working alongside you, it is making me remember what it feels like to connect with someone. And that terrifies me. Cole reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to step back if she wanted, and took her hand in his. His palm was warm and calloused, and Catherine felt a shock of awareness at the simple touch. "It terrifies me too," he admitted. "I told myself after Sarah died that I was done with feeling anything that deep. The pain of losing her and Emma nearly killed me, but I am starting to think that maybe pain is the price we pay for love, and maybe it is a price worth paying." "Is that what this is?" Catherine whispered. "Love?" "I do not know yet," Cole said honestly, "but I would like the chance to find out if you are willing." Catherine looked up into his eyes and saw everything she had been running from for 3 years. The possibility of connection, the risk of loss, the terrifying hope that maybe she could have more than just survival. "I am willing," she said softly. Cole smiled, and then he was kissing her, gentle and questioning at first, then deeper as Catherine responded. She felt like she was falling and flying at the same time, her heart racing and her mind spinning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Catherine rested her forehead against his chest and listened to the steady beat of his heart. "That was unexpected," she managed. "Good unexpected or bad unexpected?" Cole asked, his voice rumbling through his chest. "Very good unexpected." Catherine looked up at him, unable to stop smiling. "But we should probably get back to the wagons before Tommy thinks we have been kidnapped by bandits." Cole laughed, and the sound of it filled Catherine with joy. They walked back to camp hand in hand, and if Tommy noticed the change between them, he was wise enough to keep his observations to himself. That night, Catherine took second watch, and Cole stayed up with her even though it was not his turn. They sat close together, shoulders touching, talking in low voices about their pasts, their hopes, and the strange paths that had brought them to this moment. Catherine told him about her childhood in Texas, about the way her father had treated her as an equal and taught her to be strong and independent. Cole shared memories of Sarah that were bittersweet but no longer agonizing, and he talked about his dreams of building something lasting in this wild territory. "I have been thinking about settling down properly," Cole admitted. "Maybe buying some land near Prescott and building a real house. I could still run the freight business, but I would have a home base, a place that is mine. I know it is too soon to ask you to be part of that plan, but I am telling you so you know where my head is at." Catherine felt that flutter of terror and hope again. "It is too soon to make promises," she agreed, "but it is not too soon to imagine possibilities." Cole squeezed her hand. "I can work with possibilities." The remaining days of the journey to Prescott passed in a strange combination of heightened awareness and comfortable companionship. Catherine found herself noticing everything about Cole. The way he treated the horses with patient kindness, how he could read the weather in the clouds and the wind, the quiet competence with which he handled every challenge that arose. She also noticed the way he looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention, like she was something precious and unexpected. They faced one more bandit attack 2 days outside of Prescott. But this time, Catherine and Cole worked together with such seamless coordination that the fight was over in minutes. Catherine took out the lookout with a long-distance shot that Cole swore was impossible, and then she provided covering fire while Cole maneuvered to flank the remaining attackers. The bandits fled after realizing they were outmatched, and Cole and Catherine shared a look of triumph that turned into laughter. "We make a good team," Cole said, and there was nothing casual about the way he said it. "We do," Catherine agreed, and in that moment, she knew that something fundamental had shifted in her life. She was no longer running. She was choosing. Prescott was larger than Tombstone, a growing town built around the territorial government and the mining industry. Cole had contracts with several mining operations and merchant houses, and Catherine watched with interest as he conducted business with the kind of professionalism and integrity that explained his success. He introduced her as his partner, and if anyone was surprised to see a woman in that role, they were smart enough not to comment on it in Cole's presence. The return trip was loaded with raw ore and personal correspondence, less valuable than the outbound cargo but still worth protecting. Tommy had family in Prescott and decided to stay there, so Cole hired a middle-aged man named Jack Thornton to drive the second wagon back to Tombstone. Jack was a former Army scout with plenty of trail experience and a refreshing lack of interest in other people's business. On the third night of the return journey, Cole and Catherine were sitting by the fire after Jack had turned in for the night. The stars were brilliant overhead, and the desert air had cooled to a comfortable temperature. Cole had been quieter than usual all day, and Catherine had noticed him watching her with an expression that mixed hope and fear. "Catherine, I need to say something, and I need you to let me get it all out before you respond," Cole said finally, his voice serious. "I know it has only been 2 weeks since we met. I know that is not enough time to really know someone, but I have learned more about you in these 2 weeks than I learned about some people I knew for years. I know you are brave and skilled and kind. I know you have a good heart and a strong spirit. I know that when you are beside me, I feel more alive than I have felt since before Sarah died. And I know that if you get on a stage or a horse and ride out of Tombstone looking for the next competition and the next town, it will hurt more than I am ready to admit." Catherine's heart was pounding, but she kept silent, honoring his request to hear him out. "I am not asking you to marry me or make any promises you are not ready for," Cole continued, "but I am asking you to stay, to give us a chance to see what this could become. I have enough savings to buy that land near Prescott I told you about. We could build a house together, run the freight business as partners, make a life that is ours. You would not have to give up shooting. There are competitions all through the territory, and I would support you in entering every single one. You would not have to give up your independence or become someone you are not. I am just asking you to consider building something with me instead of staying on the road alone." Catherine felt tears prick her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. "Can I talk now?" Cole nodded, looking terrified. 3 weeks ago, if someone had asked me where I would be in a year, I would have said in some town I have never heard of, shooting in some competition for money I will spend on survival. I would have said I was fine with that I had accepted it as my life. But that would have been a lie. I was not fine. I was lonely and scared and running from the possibility of caring about anyone because losing my father and brother hurt so much I thought I could not survive that kind of pain again. Cole started to speak, but Catherine held up her hand. "Let me finish. You asked me to stay, to build something with you. And the terrifying thing is that I want to. I want it so much it scares me. Because saying yes means admitting that I am tired of running. It means trusting you and trusting myself and believing that maybe we can build something that lasts. It means risking my heart again, and that is the scariest thing I can imagine." "So is that a yes or a no?" Cole asked, his voice tight with tension. Catherine smiled through her tears. "It is a yes, you fool. It is absolutely a yes." Cole pulled her into his arms, and Catherine went willingly, burying her face in his chest and letting herself cry for everything she had lost and everything she might gain. When she finally looked up, Cole's own eyes were wet. "I love you," he said simply. "I know it is fast, but I do. I love your strength and your skill and the way you see the world. I love that you showed mercy to that wounded bandit and that you laugh at my terrible jokes. I love everything about you, Catherine Hartley." "I love you too," Catherine whispered, and saying the words felt like coming home. "I think I started falling for you the moment you said you wanted me watching your back." They kissed under the stars, and Catherine felt all the broken pieces of herself starting to knit back together. This was not replacing what she had lost. It was honoring her father's memory by choosing to live fully rather than just survive. It was allowing herself to believe in a future that included love and partnership, and the kind of happiness she had thought was lost to her forever. They arrived back in Tombstone 3 days later to find the town buzzing with news. Marshal Earp had broken up a major rustling operation, and a new bank was being built on the corner of 5th and Allen Streets. Mrs. Patterson greeted Catherine with a knowing smile when she returned to the boarding house to collect her belongings. "So you will be staying in Tombstone for a while?" the widow asked. "For a while," Catherine confirmed. "Cole and I are planning to buy land near Prescott, but we will keep a base here too for the freight business." "I am happy for you, dear. That man needed someone like you in his life, and unless I miss my guess, you needed him just as much." Catherine could not argue with that assessment. Over the next few weeks, she and Cole began the process of building their life together. They purchased 50 acres of good grazing land with water access just outside of Prescott, and Cole hired a carpenter to begin work on a house while he continued running freight. Catherine accompanied him on every run, and their reputation as a formidable team spread throughout the territory. Several major mining operations requested their services specifically, willing to pay premium rates for the security and reliability they offered. Catherine continued entering shooting competitions whenever they were in town for one, and her reputation grew as word spread about the woman who could outshoot any man in Arizona territory. Cole attended every competition, cheering louder than anyone else when she won and offering comfort and encouragement on the rare occasions when she did not. He never seemed threatened by her skill or fame, only proud. 6 months after they met, on a cool January morning in 1883, Catherine and Cole were married in a simple ceremony in Prescott. Marshal Earp traveled up from Tombstone to attend, along with Mrs. Patterson and a dozen other friends they had made in their travels. Catherine wore a simple blue dress that matched her eyes, and Cole wore his best suit with a string tie. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Catherine felt a sense of rightness and peace that she had thought was lost forever. Their house was finished by spring, a solid 2-story structure with a wide porch that looked out over their land. Catherine planted a vegetable garden while Cole built corrals and a barn for the horses. They fell into an easy rhythm, working together during the day and holding each other at night, building not just a house but a home filled with laughter and love. Catherine discovered she was pregnant in late summer, and the joy on Cole's face when she told him made her heart feel too big for her chest. She saw the shadow of old grief pass through his eyes, the memory of another wife and another baby, but it was tempered now by hope and love for the future they were building together. "Are you scared?" She asked him that night as they lay in bed, his hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. "Terrified," Cole admitted, "but also more grateful than I can put into words. You have given me a second chance at happiness, Catherine, a second chance at a family and a future. Whatever happens, I want you to know that knowing you and loving you has been the greatest gift of my life." "We are going to be all right," Catherine said with more confidence than she felt. "All of us." Pregnancy agreed with Catherine. She continued riding and even entered a few competitions during her second trimester, much to Cole's nervous hovering. She finally agreed to take it easier during the last 3 months, spending more time at home and less time on the dangerous freight routes. Cole hired additional drivers and guards, building his business into a thriving operation that allowed him to be home more often as Catherine's due date approached. Their son was born on a bright morning in March 1884, 2 years almost to the day after Catherine had won that shooting competition in Tombstone. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when both Catherine and Cole feared history might repeat itself. But Catherine was strong, and the Dr. Cole had insisted on having present knew his business. When their son finally arrived, healthy and squalling with indignation at the world, Cole wept with relief and joy. "What should we name him?" Catherine asked, exhausted but radiant as she held their baby against her chest. Cole touched his son's tiny hand with one finger, his expression full of wonder. "I was thinking Thomas after your father, if that is all right with you." "Thomas Brennan," Catherine said, testing the name. "I think that is perfect." Thomas proved to be a healthy, happy baby who seemed to inherit his mother's stubborn determination and his father's easy temperament. Catherine discovered that motherhood came more naturally to her than she had expected. though she had moments of terror when she thought about all the things that could go wrong. Cole was a devoted father, patient and loving, though Catherine sometimes caught him watching Thomas with an expression of bittersweet memory for the daughter he had lost. "You think Emma would have liked him?" Catherine asked one evening as they watched Thomas sleep in his cradle. It was the first time she had spoken Emma's name aloud, and she saw Cole's surprise. "I think she would have loved being a big sister," Cole said softly. "And I think Sarah would have loved you. You are both so strong and capable, so full of life. I am not trying to replace what I had, Catherine. What we have is its own thing, its own miracle." "I know," Catherine said, taking his hand. "But I also know that Emma and Sarah are part of who you are, and I do not want you to feel like you cannot talk about them." Cole pulled her close, and Catherine felt the tension ease from his shoulders. "Thank you for understanding that. Thank you for giving me permission to hold both my past and my present in my heart." As Thomas grew into a toddler, Catherine gradually returned to competition shooting, though now she competed closer to home and never for more than a few days at a time. She discovered that being a mother had not diminished her skills, but had actually sharpened her focus. She had something to prove now beyond her own survival. She wanted her son to grow up knowing that women could be strong and skilled and independent, that there were no limits to what they could achieve if they were willing to work for it. Cole's freight business continued to thrive, and he expanded to include routes throughout Arizona and New Mexico territories. He hired a manager to handle the day-to-day operations, allowing him to spend more time at home with Catherine and Thomas. Together, they became pillars of the growing Prescott community, known for their integrity, their skill, and the genuine love they showed each other. Catherine never forgot where she came from or the loneliness that had driven her onto the competition circuit. When she encountered other women struggling to make their way in the rough frontier society, she offered help and encouragement. She taught several young women to shoot, believing that every woman should know how to defend herself and provide for herself if necessary. Cole supported these efforts completely, often donating ammunition and equipment to help with the training. In the spring of 1886, Catherine discovered she was pregnant again. She was nervous about having another child, worried that she might not have enough love to go around, but those fears evaporated the moment she held her daughter for the first time that winter. They named her Sarah Emma, honoring Cole's first family, and Catherine saw the healing it brought to her husband's heart to speak those names with joy rather than just sorrow. Thomas, now nearly 3 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister and appointed himself her protector. Catherine watched her son's gentle care of Sarah and saw the kind of man Cole was raising him to be. Their home was filled with laughter and love, with the sounds of children playing and parents who never took for granted the miracle of the family they had built together. Years passed, and the Brennans became legendary in northern Arizona. Catherine competed less frequently as her children grew, but she never gave up shooting entirely. She won the territorial championship 3 times and placed in the top 5 in almost every competition she entered. More importantly, she became a mentor and role model for young women throughout the territory, proving that marriage and motherhood did not have to mean giving up independence or personal achievement. Cole's freight business evolved into one of the most successful operations in the Southwest. He employed dozens of people, treated them fairly, and became known as a man whose word was his bond. He never forgot the lessons Catherine had taught him about mercy and seeing the humanity in others, even when dealing with bandits and outlaws. Several men who might have ended up on the wrong side of the law found honest work with Cole's company, and he gave them the second chances that changed their lives. Thomas grew into a thoughtful, skilled young man who inherited his mother's shooting ability and his father's business sense. He attended university in San Francisco, studying engineering, and returned home with plans to bring modern innovations to the freight industry. Sarah proved to be as strong-willed and independent as her mother, with a gift for mathematics and a determination to become a teacher. Both children grew up knowing they were loved unconditionally, and that their parents' partnership was built on mutual respect and genuine affection. On a warm evening in June 1895, Catherine and Cole sat on the porch of their home watching the sunset paint the Arizona sky in shades of gold and crimson. Thomas was 21 now, managing a division of the freight company. Sarah, at 11, was inside doing homework with the fierce concentration she brought to everything she attempted. Catherine's hair had threads of silver now, and Cole's face showed the lines that came with a life well lived, but the connection between them was as strong as it had been that first night on the trail when they had admitted their feelings to each other. "You ever regret it?" Cole asked, taking Catherine's hand in his. "Giving up the competition circuit to settle down here with me?" Catherine looked at the land they had built together, the home they had filled with love, the family they had created. She thought about the lonely woman she had been 13 years ago, traveling from town to town with nothing but her rifle and her prize money, convinced that isolation was safer than connection. "Not for a single second," she said honestly. "You told me once that you wanted me watching your back. But what you really gave me was the courage to stop running and start living. You gave me a home and a family and a partnership that makes me stronger every single day. I won the greatest prize of my life the day I met you, Cole Brennan." Cole smiled, that same warm smile that had captured her heart all those years ago in Tombstone. "I am the one who won, Catherine. The day you outshot every man at that competition, the day you agreed to take a chance on a freight run with a stranger, the day you said yes to building a life with me. Those were the luckiest days of my life." They sat together as the stars began to emerge hand in hand, watching their world settle into peaceful night. Inside the house, they could hear Sarah singing softly as she worked, and in the distance, they could see the lights of Thomas's cabin where he lived now, close enough to help with the business but far enough to establish his own independence. Catherine thought about the girl she had been, the woman she had become, and the future that still stretched before them. She had learned that love was worth the risk of loss, that partnership was stronger than isolation, and that the greatest courage was not in facing down bandits or winning competitions, but in opening your heart to another person and trusting them to handle it with care. "I love you," she said to Cole, words she had spoken thousands of times over the years but which still felt important and necessary. "I love you too," Cole replied, raising her hand to his lips. "Today, tomorrow, and for all the years we have left." They stayed on the porch until full dark, talking about their children, making plans for the freight business, laughing over shared memories of their early days together. When they finally went inside, Catherine took one last look at the stars hanging over their land and felt profound gratitude for every choice that had led her to this moment. She had walked into Tombstone 13 years ago with nothing but her shooting skills and a determination to survive. She was leaving this day with a family she adored, a business she had helped build, a community that respected her, and a love that had transformed her understanding of what was possible. That scared girl on the competition circuit, running from grief and fear, had found her way home. And in the end, that was the greatest prize of all. The years continued to unfold with the gentle rhythm of a life well lived. Catherine and Cole grew older together, their love deepening with each passing season. They faced challenges as all families do, droughts that tested their resources, economic downturns that required careful management, the inevitable heartaches that come with watching children grow up and make their own choices. But they faced everything together, partners in the truest sense of the word. Thomas married a woman named Elizabeth whom he met during his university years, and they gave Catherine and Cole their first grandchild in 1898, a boy they named Cole after his grandfather. Catherine held her grandson for the first time and understood in a new way the gift of continuity, of love passed down through generations. She taught young Cole to shoot when he was old enough, just as her father had taught her, and the circle of knowledge and skill continued. Sarah attended university despite the raised eyebrows of those who thought higher education was wasted on women. She became a teacher as she had planned, opening a school in Prescott that focused on educating both boys and girls to the same high standards. She never married, finding fulfillment in her students and her work, and Catherine supported her daughter's choice completely. After all, she knew better than anyone that a woman's worth was not determined by whether she had a husband, but by the life she built for herself. Cole's health began to decline in his early 60s, a gradual slowing that he bore with characteristic grace and humor. Catherine nursed him through pneumonia one hard winter, and they both knew he had been lucky to survive. After that, they talked more openly about death and what would come after, making sure all their affairs were in order and their wishes were clear. "I am not afraid of dying," Cole told Catherine one evening as they sat together in the chairs they had placed by the fireplace years ago. "I have had more happiness than most men get in a lifetime. I have loved and been loved. I have built something lasting. I got to watch my children grow up. And I got to spend decades beside the woman who changed my life. If I die tomorrow, I will die grateful." "You are not dying tomorrow," Catherine said firmly, though her heart ached at the thought of a world without Cole in it. "We have years left, you stubborn man." Cole smiled and took her hand. "However many years we have, they will not be enough, but I will take what I can get." They were blessed with several more years together. Cole lived to see his son become a father twice more and to walk Sarah down the aisle when she finally, at 43, married a widowed professor who appreciated her brilliant mind and independent spirit. He lived to see his freight company become one of the most successful in the Southwest, a legacy that would provide for their children and grandchildren for generations. On a spring morning in 1911, Cole Brennan died peacefully in his sleep with Catherine holding his hand. He was 69 years old, and he had lived to see the Arizona Territory become a state, a dream he had worked toward for decades. Catherine was 67, and she had known from the first moment of loving Cole that this day would come eventually, but knowing did not make it easier. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives Cole had touched over his years in Arizona. Business partners and former employees, families he had helped, and people he had shown mercy to, friends and neighbors and the community leaders who had worked alongside him to build something lasting in the rough frontier. Thomas delivered a eulogy that had everyone in tears, speaking of his father's integrity, his kindness, and the model of manhood he had provided. But it was Catherine who had the final word. She stood before the assembled mourners, this woman who had once been afraid to let anyone see her vulnerability, and she spoke from her heart about the man who had changed her life. "Cole told me once that he wanted me watching his back," Catherine said, her voice strong despite her grief. "But the truth is, he spent nearly 30 years watching mine. He believed in me when I did not believe in myself. He loved me without trying to change me. He gave me a home and a family and a partnership that made every day better than the one before. He showed me that courage is not just about facing danger, but about opening your heart even when you are terrified of losing what you love. Cole Brennan was the best man I ever knew, and I am grateful for every moment we had together." Catherine lived another 15 years after Cole's death, and they were good years though tinged with the ache of missing her partner. She stayed active in the community, mentored young women, and even entered a few shooting competitions in her 70s, winning more than a few to the astonishment of men half her age. She spent time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories about the wild early days of the territory and the importance of integrity and courage and love. She never remarried, telling anyone who asked that she had already had the great love of her life and did not need another. But she was not lonely. Her home was always full of family, and she remained close to Sarah and Thomas until her own health began to fail. Catherine Hartley Brennan died in her sleep on a warm June night in 1926, just shy of her 83rd birthday. She She was surrounded by family in the home she and Cole had built together, and her last words were reportedly about seeing Cole again and wondering if he had been missing her as much as she had missed him. Her obituary in the Arizona Republic described her as a pioneer woman who helped shape the character of Arizona in its formative years, a champion markswoman whose skill was legendary, a devoted wife and mother, and a role model for generations of women who followed in her footsteps. But to those who knew her best, Catherine was simply someone who had learned that the greatest courage was not in winning competitions or facing down bandits, but in choosing love despite the risk of loss. The Brennan Freight Company continued for another generation before being sold to a larger transportation concern, but the family made sure that Cole and Catherine's names remained associated with the business and the values they had established. The land they had purchased outside Prescott remained in the family, with Thomas's descendants building homes there and carrying on the traditions of hard work, integrity, and love that their great-grandparents had established. Years after Catherine's death, a historian researching the role of women in the development of the American West came across records of the Tombstone marksmanship competition of 1882 and the remarkable woman who had outshot every man competing that day. Following the trail of that story led to the fuller picture of Catherine's life, her partnership with Cole, and the way their love story had rippled out to affect countless lives over the decades. The historian wrote a book about Catherine's life, and suddenly this woman who had simply tried to live with integrity and courage became a symbol for a generation of women looking for models of strength and independence. Young women read about Catherine's refusal to let societal expectations limit her, about the way she had carved out a space for herself in the rough world of the frontier, about the partnership she had built with Cole based on mutual respect and genuine love. But perhaps the most fitting memorial to Catherine and Cole was not in books or historical records, but in the lives of their descendants who carried forward the lessons they had taught. Generation after generation of Brennans grew up hearing stories about the great-great-grandmother who could outshoot any man and the great-great-grandfather who had been secure enough in himself to celebrate her skill rather than resent it. They learned about partnership and respect, about courage and integrity, about the importance of showing mercy and building something lasting. In the town of Prescott, a historical marker was eventually placed on the land where Cole and Catherine had built their home. The house itself was long gone, replaced by modern development, but the marker remained to tell the story of two people who had found each other in the chaos of the frontier and had built something beautiful together. The marker read, "On this land stood the home of Cole and Catherine Brennan, pioneers who exemplified the best qualities of the American frontier: courage, integrity, and enduring love. Cole built one of the most successful freight operations in the Southwest. Catherine was a champion markswoman who proved that skill and determination knew no gender. Together they built a family and a legacy that shaped Arizona for generations. Their story reminds us that the greatest adventures are not in conquering territory, but in opening our hearts to love." Tourists and locals alike would stop to read that marker and wonder about the lives behind the words. Some would research further and discover the fuller story: the competition where Catherine had outshot every man, the freight run where she and Cole had fallen in love, the decades of partnership that had followed. But even without knowing all the details, people who read that marker understood the essential truth: that Catherine and Cole had found something rare and precious in each other, and they had built a life that honored that gift. In the end, Catherine's story was not just about being the best shot in the territory or breaking barriers for women in a male-dominated world, though those things mattered. Her story was about a lonely woman who had been running from grief and fear, who had met a man brave enough to see her fully and love her completely, and who had chosen to stop running and start living. It was about partnership and respect, about the courage to open your heart even when you are terrified, about building something lasting in a world that often seemed temporary and violent. It was a love story, pure and simple, the kind that reminded people why such stories matter. Because in a world full of challenges and heartache, stories like Catherine and Cole's proved that love was possible, that partnership could be equal and respectful, that two people could face whatever came together and emerge stronger for it. And perhaps that was the greatest legacy they left behind, not just the businesses they built, or the competitions Catherine won, or the community they helped establish, but the proof that love, real love built on respect and trust and genuine partnership, was possible even in the harshest circumstances. They had found each other in the wild frontier, two people carrying grief and fear, and they had built something beautiful together. They had loved each other through 3 decades of joy and challenge, and they had created a family that carried their values forward for generations. That July morning in 1882, when Catherine had stepped up to the firing line in Tombstone and proceeded to outshoot every man competing, she had been looking for prize money and survival. She had found so much more. She had found Cole, who had watched her demolish the competition and had thought not about his wounded pride, but about how much he wanted someone that's skilled and strong watching his back. And in wanting that, he had given Catherine something she had not known she was looking for: a partner, a home, and a love that transformed everything. Their story ended as all stories must, with death and memory and the passing of years. But the love they had shared continued on in the family they had built, in the values they had instilled, in the example they had set for generations that followed. And somewhere, if such things were possible, Catherine and Cole were together again, watching over the legacy they had created and marveling at how a simple freight run in 1882 had become the foundation for a love that echoed through time. The shooting competition had been the beginning, but the real prize had been everything that came after: the partnership, the family, the decades of loving and being loved. Catherine had walked into Tombstone looking to prove she could outshoot any man. She had left having found a man who celebrated her strength rather than fearing it, who wanted her beside him not despite who she was but because of it. And together, they had built something that lasted far beyond their own lifetimes. That was the true measure of their success, not in competitions won or businesses built, but in the love that had sustained them through everything and the legacy of that love that continued long after they were gone. Catherine had outshot every man at the competition that day, and Cole had said he wanted her watching his back. In the end, they had spent a lifetime watching out for each other, building a partnership that proved what was possible when two people truly saw and valued each other. And that, more than any prize or recognition or historical marker, was the victory that mattered most.